Hello, welcome to Building Bridges with Greg and Jill. As you can see, we have a new set. We're so excited about it. And we have some wonderful guests with us today. Heather Erickson over here and Sarah West, and they're with the Chara Project. And we're looking forward to just hearing about the Chara Project and how it's really impacted my life, and I know a lot of others. And so we're excited just to hear how you started it and what you guys are doing. So welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. We always like to let people know that this podcast is all about helping people gain fresh new perspectives from different backgrounds and different worldviews and different orientations. So we bring together people who are either initiators of those kinds of interactions or people that are participating in those kind of interactions to get your feedback. So your viewership is deeply appreciated, but also your comments and opportunities for us to respond to those comments are very helpful, because we love to see you engage with us over the topic of the day, and I think we're going to have a great time visiting with our guests for today. This is the first Building Bridges with Greg and Jill podcast of 2024. We took a little 2-month off for transition and to do a break. We have a new set, as Jill said. We are really excited about our new look and hope that you'll like it and let us know what you think. But we're back in action as of March 2024. So welcome back to the program. And do you want to make any introductions of our guests?
Yeah. Let's start with Heather. You know, I'd love for you to just share with us kind of the background of how you started what you're doing and give us an introduction to the Chara Project.
Well, it's interesting because usually the story actually starts with Sarah, and so I end up actually throwing it over to her just because, you know, her and I met, actually randomly, our husbands met back in the 1980s as childhood friends, but didn't realize that they were living in the same town in Utah until years later when they became Facebook friends with somebody.
Wow.
And so where Sarah and I ended up connecting was actually through our husbands, because they were lifelong friends.
Okay.
But it's actually, Sarah, would you mind sharing how we got started in this? Both of us have been doing ministry and doing Bible study with people from a variety of backgrounds, but I feel like the heart of it started a little bit with part of your story.
Sure. Well, I've been in Utah for 20 years now, and the first 10 years that I lived here, I really didn't get to know my neighbor. We moved here as newlyweds, did not plan on staying here. So I didn't do much to build bridges, really, to get to know my neighbor. I found my church, I found my people, my community, and felt comfortable, felt safe there. And really the second 10 years, there was a couple of things that God just started bringing people into my life and started changing my heart towards the people I lived with and lived around. One of those, I was doing Bible study at my local church on Wednesday mornings, and a woman comes in. Actually, she calls and says, "Gosh, I've been looking for a Bible study, and do you have one? Can I come?" And whoever answered the phone said, "Well, yeah, of course, you can come." And she said, "Well, there's just one more thing. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Can I still come?" Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, absolutely. So she comes one Wednesday morning and ends up in my group. I'm in my first year of leading a Bible study. And so well, let's just throw her in your room. I'm like, okay, I don't know if I know enough to do this, but sure, let's do that. And so I remember when she came in and I found out where she lived, what city she lived in here. And I'm like, oh, well, my parents used to live there. And she said, well, what are their names? And I'm thinking, they weren't very well connected either. You're like, you're not going to know them, right? Yeah. And so I tell her, gosh, they were the Temples. And she goes, they were my neighbors. Oh, they lived across the street from me. And I remember on Tuesday nights, there were cars parked out in front of their house. And I knew they were doing a Bible study. Wow. And I really wanted to go, but I didn't know if I'd be welcome there. Uh-huh. And so I meet this woman. And the irony is that her brother bought my parents' house. And a lot of the furniture that was in there alongside of it. So I'm doing Bible study with this woman, and I ended up meeting another friend who literally was one of my neighbors, and she was also LDS, and she joins our Bible study. We do Bible study for a few years. Great experience, learned a lot during that time period. But fast forward a couple of years, and this friend, the original one, she calls me and says, "Hey, I'm doing a Bible study at my house, and there's people with different faith backgrounds. Would you like to come?" And I said, well, she learn, yeah, that sounds great. And she says, well, there's just one more thing. She says, it's also on Facebook Live. And she happens to be someone from a background, or she's very well known in her community. I'm an author and a speaker. And so what that meant to me is there'd actually be people watching this, right? And I thought, there's no way I want to do this, right? Like, this is a lose-lose.
Yeah.
You know, you say too much, you say, you know, too little, you're losing one way or another. But I remember the morning of, I thought, okay, if I don't go, I'm not ever going to go, right? So I'm driving to her house to film this Bible study live. And I'm praying on the way, like, God, am I doing the right thing? God, you need a spot for me here. And I walk into her living room, and the very first thing I see is my mom's chair.
Oh my goodness.
She had gotten the chair from her brother who bought my parents' house.
Wow.
And so, you know, I had to take note of it. And I'm a little bit like, okay, Lord, I don't know really what you're doing here, but I noticed that. And so it's just this relationship with this particular woman and her involvement in her community. It led to a lot of open doors. Open doors to do public worship and Bible studies in the community.
Wow.
Writing and speaking opportunities started to come, and it started to grow big enough that I thought, wow, I need help. I know I need help. This is getting bigger than I would have even imagined. And that's when I called Heather and said, Heather, I don't know what I'm asking of you. It could be editing. It could be worship leading. She's a beautiful singer. It could be writing, speaking. I'm like, I don't know what I'm asking, but I need help, and I know you're the woman for it. And thankfully, she said yes.
Yeah, I told her and said yes. And Sarah and I's stories are completely opposite, where she was hesitant to enter into the community with her neighbors right away. Right, I got thrown into the mix. I was in the work world. I was working down in Utah County and was hanging out with a bunch of people that believed differently than me. And so within my first few years living here in Utah after transplanting from Minneapolis, I got thrown into the deep end of having to learn a completely different faith and understanding my neighbors and my community and my coworkers. And so I had come to love our community. I just adore where we live and the people that we're surrounded by, and was doing Bible study with Sarah with these differing faith backgrounds. So when she called me up and said, hey, I've got this opportunity, I don't know what it's going to be, I was all in. I was like, yes, why would I say no? People are asking us to hang out and study the Bible together and to worship together. It's an automatic yes.
Yeah.
You know, there is already so much to unpack just in the state. We have to ask a few particular questions because I think, you know, we do our podcast to help people not only hear, but then to think about how can I do this? How can I be involved?
Which is what I love about your two different stories, because a lot of us fall in this camp and just like,
yes,
I don't know what to do, and we're not going to be here forever. And then to have God just really, for both of you, God just put you in a place of like, this is what we're going to do.
That's exactly kind of the point that I hope our viewers and listeners are getting, is that, you know, as we kind of engage in the lives of other people, particularly from a Christian worldview, we are evangelical Christians. This podcast comes from that perspective. Everybody knows that. We're not shy about talking about that. We lead a ministry called Standing Together. I'm a pastor in Utah that has served as a local church pastor and now leads a ministry with Chill. But that orientation kind of feeds the way we engage people. And sometimes people get real nervous about engaging people with different worldviews, different backgrounds, different philosophies, points of view. But it's just so clear that God was in this from the beginning. You did nothing to have this woman come to your church's Bible study for women on a Wednesday morning.
Right.
You did nothing to have her get in your particular small group.
Nope.
You were
to have her brother buy your parents' house.
Exactly. And you were, practically speaking, a little intimidated by the proposition as it was kind of unfolding. But you went with it step by step, and God has just created something that is incredible. And I think, again, there's so many from our community here in Utah that are of evangelical background that get nervous about living in Utah, that they get awkward with the culture, they get awkward with their coworkers, they kind of retreat, sometimes their church can actually be a fortress against the people that are attending other faiths and other churches. So both of your perspectives gives our viewers some insight on how to live in Utah and engage our community with openness and trusting God for opportunities, trusting God for results, and just enjoying rather than kind of being, sometimes I feel a lot of Christians in Utah, traditional Christians particularly, would kind of have a chip on their shoulder, like it's hard to live in Utah, or we're such a minority in Utah as evangelicals. And I think your story, your engagement in your workplace and your enjoyment learning and growing these relationships is really a great example for anyone listening.
Well, and I think beyond the walls of Utah, I mean, there's so many places in the world where we enter into new cultures that are very different than how we have grown up or how we have come to believe. And I think these principles and these stories help in a lot of different.
And it's cool that no matter where you come from, you know, God can write the story. You know, God can create the opportunities. God can create the, you know, the varying dynamics of those relationships happening. And one of the things that Jill and I talk about in our home and in our morning prayer time is to really give the day to God, where we literally say, God, this is your day, not our day. So if you have anything on the schedule that I don't know about, please let me know about it. Guide me into conversations, put ideas in my head to text people or connect with people or call people. And then at the end of the day, sometimes I go, wow, I didn't have hardly any of that planned today, and yet I had a full day.
That's a bold prayer.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
It's his day, not my day. That's what we say. And then we see God filling the schedule, almost like you have a boss. No, you know, not an authoritarian boss or anything, but a very generous boss says, hey, can you take care of this for me? Can you go call this person? Can you? And if you... And you go, wow, it's so cool that we can just kind of let the Holy Spirit lead us.
Well, and living in Utah is quite like very, you know, so you talked about this idea of entering into different cultures or different places where you can be the minority. Utah is unique that I've never been in a workplace where I was more common for us to talk about our faith and politics and some of the taboo areas. When I was living in Minneapolis, that was not something anything ever got brought up. So the fact that I got to live in a place that openly talked about faith actually opened the doors for more conversations than I thought I ever would have gotten in another state, just because people were at least open to having the conversation. I actually found that it was delightful because it truly did change the way that I approached my work, because I could have faith conversations in the water cooler.
I agree with that. I moved here from Oregon, and so I really didn't know too many people of any faith background. In fact, growing up, I didn't know a single LDS person. So when I moved here, I knew nothing, and the only things that I did know about the LDS faith almost were a deterrent or drew me away, rather than, you know, incited me to get to know some. But yeah, I didn't. Faith conversations were not the norm growing up in Oregon, and so it was refreshing. It really was refreshing to move here and be able to talk about faiths and values.
And I think, in terms of just bringing people together from different perspectives and worldviews and opinions, there's kind of a natural sense in today's culture that if you're in a conversation where gender comes up, or LGBT issues come up, or religion comes up, or politics come up, or race comes up, we just want to like back away because we don't want to say anything wrong, we don't want to offend anybody, we don't want to be in any trouble, and so we just kind of talk about the weather, I guess, you know. But what Utah does provide, and interestingly, I was once a young, I had a mission opportunity through experiences in college to go to the Middle East. And I was like, how do you start conversations with people on the street about God? Well, in the Middle East, God is the center of their world, whether it's the God of Islam, the God of Judaism, the God of Christianity. And it was like, that was one of the most amazing experiences, and I think Utah is similar. You can bring out God here in this culture, and actually it's a welcomed topic. It's a welcomed curiosity. And I think if we will start with a little curiosity and offer to have a little, you know, questions and be willing to listen. I was on the plane the other day with a guy that was taking copious notes. We were heading to Philadelphia, and he was doing a Stephen Covey book, you know, one of the old 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. And he was taking the most intricate notes, and I had the opportunity to meet Mr. Covey before he passed away, and I struck up a conversation with him, and we were talking, and he just kind of revealed that he was interested in this conversation, but that he wasn't LDS, but he loved Utah, and he loved our skiing, and was out for a ski trip. But it was just so easy to have a conversation with him about Utah and whether he was LDS, and there was no offense. It was just a natural conversation. It didn't feel like let's see if I can get this guy to a religious conversation. You know, it wasn't anything like that. And I think that we need to maybe refresh our mind that not every topic is taboo. And what you guys are illustrating through your experience is Utah is a really fun place to live, because you can talk about these things without having conflict a lot of times. I mean, you can get the conflict if you want it. You know, you can be confrontational and negative and accusatory. But conversationally, I agree, Utah is a wonderful place to live. Don't you agree, everybody?
Well, tell us a little bit more about the Chara Project and how that got. I mean, we're getting the background here, but what is it? And
Well, so out of us doing Bible study with people that were from a different faith background, one of the things we found is that we wanted to help people not only learn how to study the Bible, but how when you come to the Bible and I come to the Bible, we may have differences in how we interpret a passage. How do we both put our bias and assumptions aside and truly read the text for what the Bible was really intending it to read? How is it actually being interpreted by the original audience that had to hear it for the first time, so that we can apply it to our lives today? And so one of the things that we started to create was the CHARA stands for C-H-A-R-A, stands for context, history, author, research, apply. We wanted to teach people how to study the Bible so they could read it for themselves, but also diffuse the tension that can sometimes be in the room when you do Bible study with people from different faiths, because we do come in with our own opinions of what we think a Bible passage is supposed to say. What if we put those aside and actually truly read it for what it was meaning? And it created the birth, the Chara Project, which is the whole purpose is to help build confidence in studying the Bible on your own and with your neighbor. So not only do we have this Bible study guide that can help guide a Bible study that has different faith backgrounds, but we also just recently came out with a neighbor guide as well, which gives these tips and tricks, things that we, but the things that we have learned and pitfalls we've had and the trials we've gone through and the mistakes that we've made, along with the things we've learned that have created this safe, loving, encouraging environment.
That's
But
great.
it's a beautiful, representation of all of the stories of Bible study over the last 10 years of what we've learned along the way. And we want to be able to give people access to it. We want to encourage people to join us in doing what we're doing because we found so much joy in it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it kind of goes back, some of the tips within that neighbor guide go back to what you were saying, Greg, about really just even engaging your neighbor in a conversation. Yes, you can use these in Bible study, but also really with just getting to engage in a relationship. Things like learning to listen and asking questions and just getting to know them. And sometimes it seems kind of simple, but just ways to engage with them.
And very authentically too.
Of course.
Yeah. I think that sometimes we can have our focus on, a certain purpose and kind of forget that, but just living life with people very authentically.
And I think a lot of our viewers, regular viewers would know this, but Standing Together from its inception was all about building bridges to the culture of Utah that we as an evangelical community were understandably and knowably a smaller group of people in this religious majority culture where the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is predominant. And in the past, I think there was a kind of fight or flight or freeze mentality among a lot of evangelicals. Fight the culture and try to preserve yourself, or run away and move away as quick as you could. Get a next job transfer or whatever, or just freeze and be afraid and operate in kind of a just try to keep it as calm as possible. But I think that what we've learned over the last 10, 20, 30 years. In fact, I was just talking with a pastor last week who's only been in Utah, and in Utah County, of all places, for 11 years. He started his church 11 years ago, and it's a Mennonite pastor. It's a wonderful friend of ours, Luke Miller. Shout out to his church down in Provo area. He said that as a result of being here just 11 years, he says the Utah I came to 11 years ago is not the Utah that I know today. The LDS community is far more friendly, far more engaging. It's so easy to have conversations. And I said, wow, you picked that up over the last decade. I've been here for 3 decades, and I can tell you that what it was like in the early 90s, there was a lot of, just entrenchment, a lot of fortress mentality. We were clustered over here, they were clustered over there. We didn't engage much. When we did, it was more confrontational, it was more debate. But over the course of the last 10, 20, maybe 30 years, Utah has become a different place, and it's right for opportunities like you guys have with the Chara Project, because it's an invitation, an open invitation to come, bring your perspective, bring your ideas. Let's sit together and kind of let those things kind of melt away a little bit and try to find some common ground. The passage that I share with my LDS friends a lot is from Isaiah. Come, let us reason together. Isaiah says in Isaiah 6. And I said, doesn't that a wonderful invitation just to come and sit together? And we have students that are coming next week and the week after from 8 different universities to engage university students at BYU and at the Institutes of Religion. And we have that same principle. It's a time to sit, to listen, to ask questions, to study, to seek understanding together. And I just think it's just been a very, very amazing thing to witness this and to see it demonstrated in things like your guys are doing, because it's really, I don't know if CAR could have happened 30 years ago, but it's definitely possible now. I mean,
No, and it's an actual fair point, because the amount of people that we've run into, not only do we do obviously Bible studies with women, we also have a couples Bible study. The women loved it so much they wanted to bring their husbands into doing Bible study, and so we have a couples one that we do. There is a hunger to want to understand the Bible, and boy, how fun is that we get to be at the heart and be a part of that as we all just journey together. Because let's be honest, we're all still learning the Bible. We're all still growing in our own faith journey. To be able to go alongside of people and really be able to study it together, it truly does bring a lot of joy. And I think that it's been life-giving for us.
yeah.
No, you're right. And just even in my own story, where the first 10 years I spent here, I call that my season where I really wrestled with God. I wasn't going to stay here. I was going to move back home. I was going to have babies and raise my kids next to grandpa and grandma. Okay? And
That was the flight mentality.
yeah. Well, and then God totally changed my heart to know where I love being here, and I love I love the people here.
Yeah, yeah.
And I see that heart change as you're talking about. I've seen that being here for 20 years now. I've seen that heart change in my neighbors too.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you talk about that fight, flight, or freeze, I can think of a story in each one of them. I've done all three of those things. And it all comes back to, I think, if you have a relationship with that person, and your response is maybe you fight or it's a flight, they're gonna extend grace. Like if you have treated a relationship, you can talk to them again later. It's not like it was the only time. I think when I first started talking to my neighbor or trying to do Bible study with my neighbor, I thought on that very first time I had to get it all out. Get it all out. It's like, no, how awkward is that? First of all, right?
Yes.
If you have a relationship, you can continue a conversation over time.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of relying on the Holy Spirit just to lead those conversations, those relationships. And I think to allow ourselves to come in ready to learn as well, not coming in feeling like we've got it all and we're going to show you.
Yeah, we talk a lot
That's
about
important too.
We talk a lot about letting go of control and praying to God, help me get out of the way. Like it should be about God's word. It should not be about Heather or Sarah or anything else. Sometimes I think we have this grasp of an agenda of what we want it to look like. And because of it, we'll try our hardest to guide the conversation a certain way. It's not our job.
Yeah.
It's not our job. Our job is to be able to go and study the Bible with people. And how cool is it that we get that opportunity?
Well, you just talked about humility, and that is so important. That's what you're saying there. When I'm doing Bible study with people who believe differently, whether they're LDS or something else, or even just believe politically differently, right?
Yeah.
My goal is not to convert someone, to make them feel like they are a project, right? What we talk about is, hey, let's explore and learn the Bible together, because I have something to learn too.
Yeah.
I'm growing in my relationship with God. I'm growing in my understanding of the Bible, and that's something that we can all agree on. So I think that coming together and knowing that we're all on this faith journey and letting people be where they're at and giving them that space and honoring that faith journey is really important.
Yeah. The Lutheran bishop of Sweden, Christer Sindal, used to put it this way, that there were three keys in interfaith dialogue. And one was to ask a knowledgeable member of that faith what they believe, as opposed to some fringe person, and then to so a knowledgeable member. And then the second tip that he offered was that you would compare your best with their best, as opposed to your best example with their worst example, kind of a thing to compare and contrast.
Apples to apples.
And so then the third tip was, remember to always leave room for holy envy. And what he meant by that is there's something that you could probably come up with, even to somebody that thinks different politically or spiritually or religiously, whatever. There's probably something in them and their experience and their tradition that you could be complimentary of, that you could go, I'm impressed with, or I admire that they, and by finding that common ground, finding that platform where the conversation can at least begin, you do find that even though, I disagree with them, but, and then, that some of that disagreement kind of becomes a little less the path, as opposed to, I'm open to this invitation, this opportunity. And I think, again, we've seen a paradigm shift. I can't call it anything other than that over the last 10, 20, 30 years in Utah, where evangelicals are more willing to enter these conversations, as well as LDS people, as well as others. And I think in the tensions that still exist in our society, political tensions, racial tensions, economic tensions, the great division in our country over politics coming up this year with the presidential election, those skills of humility, of curiosity, of holy envy, of Christian love, of charity, are all the same kinds of elements that can kind of bring down the heat of the conversation and bring up the light of the conversation, So I don't know, but I love what we're talking about. I think it's very practical and transparent or applicable to our community that's listening in.
Well, and I also sometimes I think we think, oh, we are learning this in Utah. We've got this great experience. We've learned how to engage people that may believe differently than us, and that's great for Utah. But what I think for we're learning, all the things that we're learning are things that can actually expand beyond Utah to the Christian community and to other communities in general. Of man, how can we challenge others? We have front row seats to be able to practice this every single day sitting here in Utah. But boy, I really hope that people around the world are seeing the things that we're learning and are being challenged to go and do the same. We've had a chance to speak to places outside of Utah, and they're like, I had never thought about engaging my neighbor. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, this is such a fun opportunity. Why would you not even consider it? I just don't know if, because it's not presented as easily as it sometimes is in Utah, are people being challenged enough to think about it? And I would love to encourage people to be thinking about who is their neighbor and how can I love them well, regardless of if I sit in Utah or not.
Mm-hmm. What's best in your prayers at the very beginning? Then, Laura, you guide my day. Yeah. If you truly believe that, my desires match up in the line of your desires. God, He's going to bring people into your life.
I think it's a prayer He wants to answer.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it does require faith.
Yeah.
Because I'm a pretty structured type A personality, and I didn't used to pray that prayer. And so praying that prayer was really a prayer of faith, like, Lord, I don't even know if I can do this. I don't know if I can give you my day. Because I want to plan it and organize it and make sure I've got enough to do to feel relevant and that I'm purposeful and that I'm, making a difference. And so, Lord, if I'd have to sit here and wait for you to kind of send a memo, I'm not sure that it's going to work for me. But that's kind of where I needed to get. And it's been a tough but rewarding. And Jill, like I said, Jill, I talk about this and I share this with her a lot, that sometimes I feel like I didn't get the memo. What am I supposed to do now? But sometimes it's be patient and wait.
Yeah, and I think that applies even when we do have a packed full day as well. There's these little moments that you just realize, like after praying that I'll come home in the evening like, oh my goodness, I ran into this person and we had this conversation, and that was not something planned in my day, but because we're just walking with an openness to those kind of things happening, just to see like, wow, I really think that was something that God put into my day. And then I think walking with a lack of hurry, even when we do have those packed days, to be able to slow down and be ready for those moments to have those conversations.
So in addition to what we're talking about right now about kind of our mindset and beginning our day with prayer and surrendering it to God and all that, and the humility and curiosity and the charity, I think that sometimes we hit, snags along the way, that maybe there's a certain personality that goes against our grain and there is a little tension or whatever. I remember early in the process when I was first meeting with Robert Millett, the former dean of the religion faculty at BYU. This guy took me aside, another faculty member. He took me to lunch down at the what's it called?
The pasta place there.
The pasta place. It's like somebody on YouTube, please write that in. The brick oven.
Yeah,
there you go.
The
brick oven. And he's talking to me. He's like, I'm really curious about the fact that you and Bob Millett are spending so much time together. And I see you up on the faculty floor all the time. And, what's going on? He was just like wanting the intel, right? So we're talking, and I'm being pretty transparent, pretty open, pretty sharing with this guy. I know him well. And finally he goes, hey, I just have to ask the question. I mean, surely you don't think you're going to convert Bob Millett away from Mormonism? And I said, no, I have no thought of that at all. And he's like, well, wait a minute. Are you thinking about becoming a Latter-day Saint? I said, nope, no plans to do that either. And he's like, wait a minute, I don't get it. Right. If you're not trying to convert him and he's not trying to convert you, what's the point?
Why are those are the only two options? Why are you friends?
And I'm not being unfair here because I think 20 years ago, that was a mentality. Like, if there's not an agenda here, then why would you even want to be their friend? And so I pulled back and I said, I thought this was a word from the Lord. I said, I think you're the point. He said, how am I the point? I'm not even in this story. I said, no, you are, because the mere fact that you don't think there's any value in having a friendship with someone who's LDS or evangelical, because if it's not about conversion, then there's no value. I said, what about me being a more understanding friend or an understanding person, or you being more aware of what an evangelical Christian might think about religion or theology or God? I mean, isn't that an enriching experience? Isn't that an enhancing? I mean, aren't you a bigger person if you actually know something about Islam, or you actually know something about Hinduism or Buddhism? I mean, is it terrible to even know about people that believe differently than you? Or is it not an opportunity to grow and learn and to have understanding? And I do think that that's probably one of the big areas of growth that I've seen in Utah, where I don't think that question is as normal as it once was predominant. Now it's less normal to have somebody say, well, why would you want to be a friend with the LDS people? They believe totally different than we do. Yeah, they believe very differently than us, and we can have that conversation. But I think they make great neighbors. I think they're wonderful people. I mean, we have a wonderful neighbor who's Islamic, and he's the greatest guy. He lets me use his snowplow every time we have a big snow up on the bench, and I'm amazed that he won't even let me pay him back for gas. But I'll say, Abbas, I'll buy gas. No, you're my neighbor. And I think, I'm glad I have a neighbor like Abbas, and it enriches me. It makes me I talk to him about Jesus. Don't misunderstand me. I've given him a book all about Jesus in Arabic so that he can understand what I believe. But I do that not in the spirit of challenging or, kind of confrontation. I do it in the spirit of invitation. Hey, as you're sharing with me, I want to share with you. And people can be pretty responsive in that environment if they don't feel they're being attacked.
I think, too, if you don't have those relationships, there's not an opportunity for people to see the authenticity of relationship with Christ and what that looks like. If we just put ourselves in a different place, if we are prideful, or if we don't take the opportunity to have those relationships, then you just don't get to know Christ in people, Christ, or be able to express that.
Yeah.
God surprised me, I think, when I got to know my neighbors. I'm doing Bible study with these women. I was surprised by how genuine they were in their faith. How many values we did share.
Yeah.
Raising our kids,
right?
And our marriages and our families, and so many similar values. We have different beliefs, but just how genuine I saw they were in wanting to be faithful, And that surprised me, and I wouldn't have known that had I not gotten to know them.
Yeah,
so I'm so thankful that God completely changed my heart and brought these people into my life, because I think before that I was judging them without even realizing it, and that was creating walls.
Yeah, it's so easy for us to assume based on what church you enter into, what you look like, what kind of job you have, all these different pieces. We tend to naturally judge people and put labels on them of, they must believe this because of the church they go to.
Yeah,
they must have an idea of this or that. But the idea that we can say, no, I'm going to get to know the individual at an individual level, get to understand who they are, what they believe. And I hope that they reciprocate and are willing to hear me rather than judging me based on a church I go to or what they've heard about where I work on it. It goes both ways. And you really do get to understand. If you start to understand somebody well enough, it also allows you to be able to really love them well.
Yeah.
Because you can actually reach them where they're at.
I think today with the media that we see, there's a lot of opportunities for Christ to be misrepresented. And if we don't take the time to have those genuine friendships, relationships, we can't give a better picture of who Christ is. And like you said, we want to express the same thing to them and give them an opportunity to show us who they are.
That's right.
I want to transition a little bit. I do have one illustration to what you just said that I want to share, but transition to kind of talking more specifically about how people could possibly learn more about the Chara Project and be involved or connect with you, or, what are some practical ways to take advantage of the insights and the studies that you guys are doing, because I think people are probably at this point going, how do I get involved? Or hopefully hopefully you're saying something like that, But we bring our students in. We've been doing our LDS Evangelical Student Dialogue program since 2003. This year we have 8 different universities who will be here with us, and as they engage in conversations at BYU and at the Institutes of Religion, they sit down with LDS students around a circle, maybe 4-on-4 or 3-on-3, and literally, people don't think college students have the ability to kind of think for more than about 15 minutes, Not so. These students will sit for 2-3 hours each time and then ask for more time because they're so engaged in conversations about what do you believe and what I believe, and you're explaining what you believe and they're explaining what they believe, and they're doing it with courtesy and civility and respect and kindness. So one of those experiences came when Westmont College from Santa Barbara, California, a particularly quiet young lady, as I understand it, as I remember the story, had heard one of the LDS gals say at the beginning of the conversation that she had a brother that was very sick and that she was really concerned about him, maybe even to the extent of maybe dying or something of that nature. And so the quiet gal, she interacted probably a little bit. They went through the whole 2.5-3 hour conversation. And at the very end, as they were kind of wrapping up, they decided to have a prayer together. But this was all done by the young lady from Westmont College who said, can we just close our time together by a prayer? I know we may have different views on who we're praying to and how we're praying and all that stuff, but I just wondered if we could pray for your brother. And the young LDS gal wrote to her professor that she had never had something like that happen to her in her life, where she had shared something and it was personally responded to in a prayer like that. And she said, my impressions of these people, that would be us, was that, they believed differently. And because of that, I kind of wrote them off or didn't really want to engage too much. But I saw her care for me and my brother and her tender prayer, and it just gave me a whole new perspective. I think those kinds of stories, now some people might not feel comfortable, we're not here to tell you how to have your relationships with every individual person. Some people might say, well, I don't know if I want to pray with an LDS person, or I don't want to do this with an LDS person. We'll let you decide the particulars, but in terms of just that situation and other situations that I think all 4 of us have had around this table where we've kind of stepped into the relationship a little bit deeper and gotten into conversations where we can say, hey, what do you believe about this or whatever? I think our kindness and their kindness to us is a mutual blessing. It's a gift that we give to one another in our humanity. That, I look at Jesus and I don't look at him rebuking the sinner and the worldly person. I do see him doing that with the religious spirit of his day. He rebuked that pretty boldly. But with a lot of broken people, a lot of just everyday people, he was generous, he was kind, he responded, he healed, and I just think that as Christians, we are given the opportunity, to love our neighbor. And how do we love our neighbor? We show respect, we show kindness, we show curiosity, we're willing to carry their burden for them. There's a lot of ways in which we can do that, but I think, again, we're pretty clear here that it's an enriching, very, very positive kind of experience to find somebody who thinks differently and find something that you can respect about them or appreciate about them, build a friendship, and again, just leave it to God. As Paul has to tell the Corinthians, I planted, Apollos watered, but God gives the increase. God does the changing. God does the moving. And so, I don't know. Yeah, I just wanted to make
and then,
illustration.
if one of you want to kind of fill us in, you have so many resources to help with this kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, at the heart of everything that we do, I've already said it once, but I'll say it again because it's so important, is we want to help build people's confidence in studying their Bible on their own and with their neighbor. And so the on their own piece is if you're not to that spot where you're feeling like, man, I don't know if I'm ready to completely, fully engage. I need to get to know my Bible better. I'm maybe still new at understanding my Bible. Go download the Chara Bible Study Guide and learn how to study the Bible on your own so that you can feel equipped to be able to enter into a relationship with someone where somebody asks you a question about the Bible, you know how to find the answer and you feel equipped. But if you're at a spot where the Bible's familiar and you understand it and it brings you joy, then go and build confidence in studying with your neighbor. And so we have the Chara Bible Study Guide that can be used as a tool in Bible study. You can go supplement along with other Bible studies that are out there to ask questions to bring the original text out, or you can use it as a way to help ask questions that will diffuse the tension of the room as you're talking about maybe differences across the table. But then the neighbor guide is the tips and tricks that we've learned along the way that can help you as you go and engage with your neighbor. Both of them are free, available on our website to download. And then we also offer a bunch of other resources, neighbor-friendly Bible studies and reading plans, articles that will help you deepen your faith and understanding the confidence that you can find in the Bible. All of it is on our website at thecharaproject.com.
So obviously you can be reached by website,
Correct.
which is thecharaproject.com, the THECHARA project.com. You can contact you by email through hello@charaproject.com.
Yeah.
And follow us. Is that on Instagram or Facebook? What is that?
So the Chara Project or at the Chara Project is Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, all YouTube. Yeah, we have a bi-weekly podcast as well.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So lots of ways for you to connect with these two ladies and learn about not only what they're doing, but how to be involved. When you say download, you can actually download this item and others like it.
Correct.
To review it, study it, print it out, have it.
We have church groups that use it, that use it to be able to equip their people on how to study the Bible. We have others that are using it as a supplement to Bible studies that they are doing on the side. There's a lot of different ways that you can leverage our resources depending on where you're at with your group or even as an individual.
I think, too, you guys have been a little surprised that this is not just a Bena, Utah thing.
No, it's not at all. We have a huge base that's outside of Utah because what we learned is that there's a lot of people hungry to build confidence in studying the Bible. And so what has been a very pleasant surprise is that, brand new believers, people that are exploring Christianity, long-time seasoned Christians, we're seeing a variety of different people that are knocking on Chara's door, trying to understand the Bible.
So would it be fair to say that you sponsor or don't? I mean, are there like Bible studies all over that people can step into that you have organized and that you have?
We don't organize. Yeah, we don't organize any of them because we want to give the freedom for people to pick it up and do it as they want. And so we just have churches that have contacted us, asking us either questions or asking us to come and speak. Exactly, a variety of different reasons why they reach out to be able to talk to us about the studies we have.
So that's really good to know, because to some degree, people would kind of like, well, I would participate if I knew that there was one. But what we're saying to you is that you can start one.
You can start. Right.
You can begin with a friend and then reach out to two friends. One of the things that I think that's really, an amazing movement worldwide right now, and it's kind of referred to basically as the discipleship making ministries that are very much in play at world missions and missionaries, just building relationships. And it's like two people finding two people, or one person finding another person, and just beginning the process of cultivating the friendship, getting together, maybe for a coffee, maybe for a drink, maybe for a lunch, and fostering some kind of friendship that you go, wouldn't it be fun if we could share this with another couple people? So 2 people becomes 4 people, 4 people becomes 8 people. And before you know it, it's like, wow,
It's a big group.
And then more groups form out of that. And it's a phenomenon, because I think, like Jill said earlier, the media that we live in today and the culture that we live in today wants to paint sometimes the worst picture of Christians and Christian behavior. And it gets highlighted, whenever there's extremists in various expressions of extremism. But I think that the compassion, the care, the serving, the loving, the caring that goes on in our society in the name of Jesus is remarkable and powerful, and it does favor a more civil society, and the principles of Christianity are to honor, respect, love one another. And I find that that is happening in broader ways and more powerful ways than maybe most people know.
Well, and more personal ways. That one-on-one relationship that you were speaking of is really where it can begin. And even on our website, we have a whole Bible study leader guide that's meant for if you want to start for the first time a Bible study. What does that look like? And it doesn't have to be this large group and this grand experience. It could just be you calling a neighbor and saying, can we study the Bible together? It can be as simple as that. We give tips along the way of how do you schedule and how do you do all of the logistics to make it work for you. But honestly, it just depends on how can you love your neighbor well?
Yeah.
What does it look like to love well?
Yeah.
Go do that. And it could just be with one person to start.
Yeah.
I remember I was told when I was first became a Bible study leader, it's not about how much you know, it's about how much you love, or how well you love.
That's great.
And I would say that because I think sometimes we think, well, I can't enter into this relationship with my neighbor because I don't know enough. I don't have all the answers, right? And so I would encourage you, and sometimes God just opens that door regardless, right? And for me personally, when that door was open, that's what dove me into my Bible. And I was far more hungry to know it better, now that I had kind of this little bit of challenged, and so you don't have to have all the answers before you start.
Yeah.
You pointed out earlier, Sarah, that you were a Bible study leader at your church.
Yeah.
Do you find that there's a distinction between inviting people to a church facility to have a Bible study as opposed to inviting someone to their home?
I did have some friends that would come to my church there. However, when we started going to our homes, and particularly, it's currently I host at my house, but we've traveled around. We've traveled between different houses, and what's really interesting is if we're at this friend's house, she started to invite all of her neighbors, and they started coming. They wouldn't come to my house, but they'd go to hers. So,
Yeah.
And same thing, as we go to different houses, people are far more likely to go check out a Bible study at someone's house than maybe entering into a place of worship, a building, is kind of another step. It can be a barrier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then another question, and I know that Jill's been involved in this too. It seems like this is it more ideal for women to do this, or are men doing this as well? And what would you suggest for men in terms of gathering for Bible study? Or is it not as convenient or practical in the
Well, obviously, we're doing it with couples, so we know the guys will do it. So we will, although they are our husbands, so that might have part of it.
That was good.
But they may have a bias toward it because they hang out with us too much. But I will say that the people we've heard that are men that are doing it almost often, at least, and I'd be curious of your thoughts, Sarah, is then more one-on-one. There it may not be in a men's group and getting a bunch of dudes together, before work or whatever. But would they be willing to call their neighbor up and just do a Bible study with one person? Yes. That seems to be a little bit more of a common thing we've seen.
Good point.
But again, I don't think this is just a girl thing versus a boy thing. It truly is. Who is comfortable and willing to go and step out in that uncomfortable zone of be willing to love your neighbor? I think once you're ready, and God puts that place in front of you, it's going to be hard.
But what we have seen, and you spoke to this earlier, we've been doing Bible study with other women, they go home and tell their husbands.
Yeah.
And I have a girlfriend who she had to leave early for Bible study because she had a massage, and she's listening to this Marco Polo. She's listening to, I Marco the whole Bible study for her. She's listening to it. Her masseuse is listening to the entire Bible study. It's like, that's pretty cool. What's going on there?
Yeah.
But I think they talk about it to their neighbors, to their husbands, and then there's an interest, and that's what started our couples Bible study. So even if it started with the women, it quickly, it can move into something beyond that, just depending on where they're at. Yeah.
Well, this has been a fascinating conversation. I feel like we could just go on forever, but I hope that as our audience, you are encouraged even just to ask that first question. I think that you will be surprised by how many people really do want to dig deeper in the Bible and how life-changing it is, So I would encourage you to take that first step and just ask the question, hey, I'm interested in studying the Bible more. Would you be interested in joining me? And to use the resources that the Chara Project has on their website. They're so helpful.
And I think we could put on the notes or on the screen the website so as well. We'll have that up for you. Just want to thank you guys for checking out Building Bridges with Greg and Jill. If this is your first time, we really appreciate you checking out the program and listening in. Again, your comments are helpful and we enjoy responding to them. But I think that the wisdom of the day is join your curiosity with a little bit of love and kindness, mix in some respect, and just go for it. I think that people are far more willing to say yes to a friend than to some stranger at the door or to some church program. And I think it's so fascinating to think of all the places in the United States of America today where this is happening more creatively and just kind of organically is a place like Utah. Whereas, places like Orange County or Denver or back east, they just kind of take for granted sometimes that it's too hard to talk to people, it's too hard to talk to your neighbors. And maybe we can be an example to the rest of the country that as Christians, we need to be people of peace, people of encouragement, people of kindness and invitation, and I call it hospitality, just being a gracious neighbor, serving, inviting over, getting to know them. Don't just drive into your garage every day and close it down real quick, you know. Say, hi, neighbor, how are you? We have a new neighbor that's just moved in a couple houses up the street, so we're looking forward to getting to know them and hopefully forming a new friendship with them as well. So
thank you for joining us, Sarah.
Thanks for having me.
So great to have you guys.
Exactly. And so, hey, we'll see you next time on Building Bridges with Greg and Jill. God bless.